So as more checks are being sent out right now to low-income households, new fourth stimulus payments have also been approved to address the hardships that many people are facing and have been facing over the past years. So wave 1 of the fourth stimulus checks are going to be direct deposited and mailed out to eligible residents, and also there is more stimulus money going out. Maine residents, for example, could be eligible to get $850 checks to address the crisis and inflation-induced economic woes. A necessary estimated 850,000 residents will be able to collect their relief checks too, which are funded by a little half over the state's budget surplus. So eligible individuals have until probably the end of October to fill out the necessary paperwork to claim their payments. And according to the news centers, the state governor has said in support of the bill, what this budget shows once again is that through hard work and good faith negotiations, Democrats, Republicans, and independents can come together and get something done for the Maine people. And that is what we want to do without bitter bipartisanship that has sometimes divided the states. So in order to qualify for this fiscal relief, the Maine residents must be a full-year resident, living there for the whole year. So according to the governor's office, individuals must have also an annual income that is under $100,000. So if filing individually or under $200,000, if filing jointly, it must not be filed as a dependent. Mills signed a bill green-lighting the checks back in April. She proposed the relief checks to alleviate the fiscal strain that's brought onto residents of Maine and managed to wrangle the measure through the state legislature. The stimulus is projected to cost a total of around $730 million. It's also important to remember that checks will be rolled out to residents using the address on the 2021 Maine income tax return. New Englanders have until the end of the year and the warning months. If New Englanders want to stay warm in their home this coming winter, it's probably going to be expensive. So, Joe Biden did something about this. Joe Biden warned the oil and gas companies to not increase the gas prices for consumers. So during a press conference today, Joe Biden said, "Don't let me repeat this, do not use this as an excuse to raise gas prices or gouge the American people." So there are a few signs that gas prices have actually jumped significantly as the hurricane passed. As the day 99 rose, falling prices have actually nationally ended recently, and the 14-week decline was the longest streak since 2015. The nationwide average price has also risen by about $5 a gallon and $6 in California. In June, as the economic recovery and an increase in travel boosted demand for gas and caused a spike in oil prices. Gas prices have actually mostly reflect trends in global prices and crude oil prices. Both the US benchmark and the international benchmark have been slumping since mid-June on growing fears of a global recession that will reduce demand for energy. Many energy analysts believe that prices are more likely to rise than fall in the next 2 months, but changes in sentiment about the economy and even hurricane season make predictions uncertain. Biden's approval rating dropped 5 points in the past week. A new poll found that 41% of respondents approved of Biden's job performance. That's down from 50% last week. The results are a reversal of recent weeks, during which Biden's approval rating has been significantly following a series of legislative successes. And Biden last month signed bipartisan legislation to increase investment in semiconductor chips and to expand health care for veterans. He also signed a major climate tax and healthcare package to law. The poll found a lower approval rating comes largely from a decline in Biden's approval among Democrats, and approval for members of the president's party dropped 85% in last week's polling.
Thank my colleague from Texas, and I think at some time in whatever it is you do in life, there's a saying, it's just time, it's rug cutting time. And what does that mean? It means face the reality of what is in front of you right now. Don't try to paper over it, don't try to dismiss it, and don't ever think there's always going to be time, sometime in the future, to address a crisis that you face today. Now, I brought with me a picture of an iceberg. And this is the way our debt looks. You only see a very small portion above the surface. Most of the iceberg is below the surface. We talk about kitchen table economics. What do we mean by that? We tell people, hey, you know what? We had really good revenues last year. It was $4.8 trillion. That sounds like a lot of money. Yeah, but we went out and we spent $6.1 trillion. And they said, oh, well, that doesn't sound like that's not much of a difference. Kitchen table economics. You sit down with your wife, you look at what your earnings are, and you say, well, geez, honey, we had a pretty good year. We made $48,000. She looks at it and says, that's a lot of money. I said, yeah, but we spent $61,000. It's like, oh my God, we couldn't have possibly done that. What allows you to borrow more money than you should have? It's irresponsible lending. It's irresponsible spending. When the United States of America makes a conscious decision to enter into overwhelming debt that will not only rest on the shoulders of our children and grandchildren, it will rest on us. We talk about spending, and we talk about the size of our debt, and we say, you know, it's in the last year and a half, it's gone up $9 trillion. So how much is that then? Well, we're up to about 31 trillion in the red. But then we said, yeah, but you know what? That covers a certain portion of our debt. What it doesn't take into consideration is our unfunded liabilities. And when you add in the unfunded liabilities, it's a whopping $123 or $124 trillion in debt. It is unimaginable. And if you could imagine it, you would never be able to lay your head on a pillow at night and say, things are pretty good. Because if we can't do this, we'll just print more money. If you printed more money in the private sector, you're responsible. That is called counterfeiting. Why were we always so worried about counterfeiting? Because the market would get flooded with paper that had no real value. What in the living hell has happened to our citizens? And more importantly, what has happened to their elected leaders who they have elected to come here and act in their best interest? We are at a titanic moment. Our country is steaming full speed ahead at an iceberg that will sink us. We live in the most dangerous times our country has ever seen. Budgets are the key to being able to sleep soundly at night. Budgets are the plan that you put together where you understand what your potential earnings could be, and more importantly, what do you want to spend? Nobody in the private sector would ever develop a plan like the government does. And I was told when I first got here, you know your problem, Kelly? You think that a government should be run like a private business. My answer was no. What I know for a fact.
On deployed Iraq with his unit for a year when he was Attorney General. Came home with decorated soldier, Bronze Star, Legion of Merit, Dollar's Conspicuous Service Cross. He didn't die in the line of duty. He came home from Iraq with cancer. It was a horrific cancer that stole us from him. Stole him from us. But still, it always feels to me on Memorial Day.
So as the cost of living continues to surge across the country for millions of people, top lawmakers in several states are now urging for President Biden to take executive action. Biden could pass a new executive order that would send out relief from gas prices to Americans. Up to $400 stimulus payments could be approved next week. And with a huge budget surplus, Governor Gavin Newsom announced an $18.1 billion inflation relief package meant to help Californians amid the skyrocketing inflation rates. Governor Newsom said in a statement, "We enacted the most comprehensive economic stimulus program in the nation last year, getting billions of dollars in immediate relief to millions of Californians. But many folks are still struggling, especially with high costs due to inflation. So we're leveraging this historic surplus to get money back into the pockets of Californians." The governor also noted that the relief package will help offset the higher costs that Californians are facing and provide support for those still recovering from the effects of the crisis. Most of the money will go towards sending out $400 payments to car owners. Californians who have more than one vehicle registered to their name will get $800. That's because the payments are capped at 2 vehicles per person. Officials announced previously that legislative leaders have announced that different plans to help Californians with cash rebate. That puts Democrats in the California Senate at odds with Newsom. So friends, they will need to reach a compromise. Newsom is also spending $2.7 billion on emergency rental assistance, helping qualified low-income tenants who requested rental assistance before March 31st. Under the governor's plan, another $1.4 billion will be spent to help Californians pay past due utility bills. The investment will build on last year's utility relief program to help residents with water and electric bills. Another $933 million will be spent providing up to $1,500 payments to hospital and skilled nursing facility workers who were caring for patients during the crisis. Newsom also wants to spend at least $750 million on incentive grants to provide 3 months of free public transportation for communities throughout the state. The governor's plan also includes $304 million to make healthcare coverage more affordable for some families. The proposal would extend healthcare insurance premium assistance under Covered California for families of 4 earning up to $166,000 annually. The governor's office said this would affect upward of 700,000 Californians. The credit also became fully refundable, meaning a family could collect it even with a $0 tax liability. Plus, half of the credit was paid in monthly installments that hit bank accounts from July through December. New data from the Federal Reserve reveals that the boosted child tax credit was instrumental in helping families build savings. And with the enhanced version off the table, savings can now stagnate or quickly get depleted. The Federal Reserve found that parents who received monthly child tax credits last year most frequently saved that money, bought things for their children, or used the cash to cover necessities. But interestingly enough, savings was the most common use of those child tax credit payments, with 43% of recipients saying they were able to bank at least a portion of that money. Not only did a boosted child tax credit help families shore up their savings, but it also helped many pay down their debt. In fact, 21% of those who received those monthly payments used at least some of that money to chip away at debt obligations.
Not as it was the last time I held his hand, but the day I pinned his bars on him as a second lieutenant. I see him with me down at the Delaware Memorial Bridge, hugging all the Gold Star families. Days like this bring back before your eyes their smile and their laugh. The last conversation you had, each of you know it. The hurt can be overwhelming. But for so many of you, as is with Jill and me, the hurt is wrapped around the knowledge that your loved one was part of something bigger than any of us. They chose a life of purpose. Sounds corny, like a Memorial Day speech, but I mean it from the bottom of my heart. They chose a life of purpose. They had a mission. And above all, they believed in duty. They believed in honor. They believed in their country. And still today, we are free because they were brave. We live by the light, the flame of liberty that they kept burning. And so a part of them is still with us no matter how long ago we lost them. As hard as it is for many to believe, especially those whose loss is still raw, I promise you the day will come when the memory of your loved one, your patriot, will bring a smile to your lip before it brings a tear to your eye. That's when you know you're going to make it. Today, American service members stand watch around the world. And as many of you know, it often at great personal risk. And this Memorial Day, we know the memory is still painful of all the fallen who lost their lives during the last 2 decades in combat. Each of them leaving behind a family, a community, hearts broken by their absence, and lives that will never be the same. We see in the hundreds of graves here in Section 60 at Arlington, reminder that there's nothing low risk or low cost about war for the women and men who fight it. 7,000.
So the good news, everybody, is here about the fourth stimulus check, and here's a ton of information that you're going to learn in this video. Now, a new bill has been passed. Yes, a new bill has been passed, and the Georgia governor officially signed a bill that actually would deliver additional income tax refunds due to the state's budget surplus. The Department of Revenue confirmed that the bill will actually refund some or all of the 2020 income taxes for 2020 and 2021 filers. According to the Department of Revenue, said single filers receive a $250 check. Single adults with dependents receive a $375 refund, and married couples receive $500. The good news is that Georgians could receive their check in the coming weeks. The Department of Revenue says it will attempt to include the new bill's refund check along with other refunds amounts due on 2020 returns. 2021 returns, actually. The state will issue a separate refund for Georgians who already filed taxes for 2021 prior to the bill becoming law. And Georgians who filed taxes in 2020 and 2021 by the deadline will receive some along with the regular state refund. It is important to note that the additional action is not necessary for people who already filed their income taxes. The Department of Revenue will actually send the refund to your designated bank account or check. Now here's some more breaking news from the Biden administration. President Biden announced today that his administration is proposing a tweak to the Affordable Care Act to make health insurance more affordable for millions of people in the country. The shift would actually fix what is known as the family glitch, a loophole that has prohibited more than 5 million people from accessing subsidized health plans on the Affordable Care Act marketplaces, even if they don't actually have their other affordable options. Experts have said that it is a huge deal, and it is one of the biggest things that Biden administration can do on its own to expand coverage. The fix, which the Biden